Hello, USC fans. Connor Morrissette and Chris Trevino. After a very early USC spring football practice, it's time for instant analysis. Let's break down what we saw today, Chris. You were out here before anyone. I think you got here around 4:30 a.m. to cover this practice. We heard some classic rock jumping out from the speakers this morning. What were your takeaways from seeing the guys come out early on? And we can get into some practice observations as well.
My first takeaway is that I'm very tired. It's been a long 8 hours for both of us. You were at the women's game last night. I was uploading a podcast at 1:30 in the morning. I'm losing my energy. This man is coursing with coffee through his body right now. If you cut him open, it would just be a dark roast. But, it was a full pads practice, the first that we've seen for the media. They practice in pads on Saturday, so that's always nice. We didn't get a good look at them because the sun wasn't even out when they were coming out. They practiced under the moon, like a full moon, like literally a full moon. But yeah, just hearing the pads was nice. That first day, our first day for us, seeing them in pads is always exciting, just to see these guys are big coming out on the first day. They're even bigger with the pads on, so it was nice to be able to see that. Got to see some of those turnover drills. Lincoln Riley getting after it with some of those guys, so it was pretty active for so early in the morning, and I know some of those guys love being there early morning. Lincoln Riley certainly does.
I was going to say, I don't know if it was the morning or the fact that he was yelling, but you could really hear Lincoln Riley's southern accent. Jake Jensen threw a pass behind a receiver. "Come on, Jake!" And then he was yelling at Jacoby Lane in that drill too. "Come on, Jacoby!" And you could just hear his southern accent a little bit more than I've been used to. So that was interesting. I thought the biggest observation I had was Zachariah Branch in those turnover drills. It's really hard to make a guy miss because the defensive back is right on your back. You catch the ball, and then they try to punch the ball out. And somehow Zachariah Branch had a rep where he not only made the first defensive back miss, but he made the backup miss as well, and that got the attention of a lot of people. Doug Belk wasn't happy with some of the defensive backs after that, but that's just Zachariah Branch for you. After practice, Chris, Lincoln Riley talked about how the NIL setup from this past year to now is, I don't think he said night and day, but it's totally different. I think you had the tweet, so maybe I can pass you the mic in a second, but USC has the big recruiting weekend this past weekend. Lincoln Riley was asked about NIL. He said it's taken a major step forward. It seems like it's a really good time to be a fan of USC football, just with the recruiting gains, the team practicing. Life is good right now.
Life is good right now, not for me because I am personally really tired. But yes, after a big recruiting weekend, remember, he cannot talk about specific recruits, so you can't say, hey, Lincoln Riley, how's getting Justice Terry? You can't do that until they sign, But yeah, the key word was, or the key phrase was, he said, their NIL has taken, quote, monster leaps.
There we go.
That's several months. He said monster leaps since they've arrived and monster leaps in the last several months, which is, eye-opening, something you're going to raise your eyebrow, like, okay, is USC going to start playing with the big boys of college football, some of those bigger NIL programs across the country? But again, we have to wait. It's going to be several months until we finally see if USC's NIL is finally rolling. I know it's nice to get these guys in March and in spring, but recruiting battles are not won in the spring, Connor. They are won in December and in the fall, late into the season. USC is going to have to play defense with some of the big guys that they have added so far in this class. Julian Lewis, Justice Terry, Isaiah Gibson, guys like that, 5-star caliber guys. NIL is going to be a big play for them. So we're going to see down the line if USC's monster leaps have been taken in NIL and if other teams are going to come just as hard for those guys. But it was encouraging to hear him talk about NIL and how much it has grown since he's arrived and recently. And as we saw, momentum is building for USC recruiting in 2025.
That's true. And just to wrap up the NIL conversation here on Instant Analysis, we'll have some more NIL talk. Sounds like some boosters have stepped up, which is big. And the fact that that court case in federal court from a month ago kind of opened things up to really whatever you want to do. I think those are two significant developments, and that's a big part of why we saw USC have a lot of success last weekend, as well as Eric Henderson and just this new defensive staff. We can't not talk about that as well. The fact that these new coaches are here, there's a lot of buzz. Mix that group with the NIL, and you have what happened Saturday. So I thought that was the biggest takeaway from today, Riley talking about NIL. But he also hit on a lot of other things, and we heard Josh Henson as well as some other offensive players. You had Alani Noah. I thought the other interesting thing with Lincoln Riley was he just mentioned the buzz around USC and the fact that he really believes USC can offer, forget NIL, forget football, just the experiences to recruits. So it kind of seemed like he was cooking with gas a little bit this morning. He's in a really good mood. He was at the women's game last night, but the recruiting momentum, I think, has put a smile on his face. and he was really happy about that. Let's go to Alani Noah, though. You had a chance to catch up with him. What did he say?
Yeah, a lot of debuts for people. We spoke to several transfers, as you said, and Alani Noah, who had an interesting season last year, started the season opener, a very rare feat for a true freshman offensive lineman, and then kind of fell off a little bit. He went through some personal stuff off the field, some stuff with family. He talked about a little, not specifics, but he did mention that he had to deal with that and kind of change his mentality a little bit. Tried to finish strong. Got more playing time at the end of the season after that gap after he started. So. He's a big dude, very soft-spoken though, a little shy talking to us. I'm sure he'll grow into that role, but, he's just excited. He talked about how that freshman season for him, there was a lot to gain mentally. In high school, you're just focused on defensive line and linebackers. You said college, I wasn't really expecting, your defensive line, linebackers, the secondary, you're learning all these different things. So it's a whole nother world he's been learning or had been learning as a freshman. And I was just kind of focusing on getting down the plays, learning the offense, and learning all those formations. So I'm excited to see what we see from him in year 2. Got that key playing time as a true freshman. And, they need people to step up, especially on the interior and the offensive tackles, which I'm sure we're going to talk about. But, Alani Noah is a guy that people are penciling in to have a bigger role this season.
You mentioned the offensive tackles. Josh Henson talked about how he shares Lincoln Riley's concerns. The depth isn't great, but he is happy with the room, he said right now. I don't really expect him to say anything else in March. They are probably going to look for someone in the transfer portal, he confirmed, so not really any new news there. Tobias Raymond has gained, I think, 60 pounds since he was a senior in high school, now his second year in the program. That was another takeaway. We heard from Woody Marks as well, Chris, the new running back who transferred from Mississippi State. Soft-spoken, quiet, kind of like Alani Noah. He talked about how when he was little he wore the Woody Halloween costume from Toy Story, and that's how he got that nickname. He wouldn't want to take it off, wear it to school. So I thought that was really funny. And then Cade Eldridge, I heard from him as well. He said Joey Olsen is a freak, and he's someone who has had a really good spring camp so far. So a little bit of news and notes there. Anyone else did you talk to today?
Jaden Richardson,
Yes.
the wide receiver addition. Very smart. He went to Tufts, transferring from Division III.
The Jumbos.
I know Tufts isn't an Ivy League, but they might as well be. They're Ivy League adjacent. You could tell, very smart kid, very well spoken. He is the old guy in that room. He's the oldest player in that room, but he's also the new guy. And he says he's been, kind of balancing that of, kind of picking and choosing where he steps up in talks and, in meeting rooms in the locker room, because he is new and he's still learning his teammates, and he's also learning himself. Obviously, he's learning this offense, but he's really excited to be here. He grew up a USC fan. His parents are from the area, and he said it took him about a week until it finally sunk in, like, whoa, this is it. I'm here. I'm playing at USC, and meeting his teammates, meeting Lincoln Riley. He's kind of a little starstruck about Lincoln Riley. So it took about a week for him to really settle in and be like, okay, this is actually happening. I'm not dreaming. I am a USC Trojan. So you love to see when a local kid and a fan of the program, gets to be in the program, and they don't take it for granted, that's for sure.
The last interview came from Jaden Maeva. We had the chance to meet him. He didn't have a ton to say about his recruitment and about UNLV, just that he was excited to compete. He's meshing well with the receivers. He has a good relationship with Miller Moss, and he's just really excited to learn under Lincoln Riley. What was the biggest draw for him coming to USC? It was Lincoln Riley and learning under him, which with Riley's history of quarterbacks, that makes a lot of sense. So I'm excited to learn more about Jaden Maeva as the spring rolls on and see what he can do in the spring game. That's probably the only live action we'll see from him, unfortunately. So April 20th, if you want to come see him play as well, you can in the Coliseum. Outside of that, we can really only go by what he said, and he didn't have a ton to say today, but still cool to meet the new quarterback and someone who's going to fight for a starting job with Miller Moss. So let's wrap it up there, Chris. I guess I kind of joked earlier I wouldn't do this to you, but any final thoughts?
Yeah, I do have a couple final thoughts. One being Lincoln Riley was asked about the wide receiver depth and if it's changed their practice habits. He said a little bit, maybe not to the untrained eye. You wouldn't really tell, but they are really slim on wide receivers.
Did say untrained eye.
Untrained eyes. 7 scholarship wide receivers. That's very low. That's very, very low. They're going to have to do something in the portal. Maybe take at least 2 guys because they need some bodies in there because they do like to rotate. So we'll see how that changes throughout the next several months as they try to beef up that room. And then Henson had a nice little quote at the end when he was asked about the defensive line. He said this year you can tell they're more physical, but they're also playing through you, not trying to go around you. That's something that USC fans will love to hear. You're going to the Big Ten. You can't go around people. You got to go through them. So it's making the offensive linemen better, having that kind of competition and aggression they're going up against in practice. So that's a little no for you, Connor. And now I want to go sleep.
Yes, thank you. No more Speed D. In case you didn't know, Alex Grinch is gone. No more Speed D. That's what everyone has been emphasizing with the defensive side of the ball here so far in spring practice. He's Chris Trevino. I'm Connor Morrissette. This has been Instant Analysis. We'll be back Thursday with another edition of Instant Analysis after USC practices once again. We'll see you then. Stick with USCFootball.com for full coverage of everything spring practice related, as well as the USC women's basketball team who will play in the Sweet 16 in Portland against Baylor on Saturday.